Well, it's John Black, super chemist. Here, part two on slavery in the USA. I'm just going to go over a bunch of miscellaneous stuff here, basically. One of the first things is, when the England came over to America, before settling anything or whatever, the first ships that got here, right? The Indians that met them were happy to see the white people, right? The white people from the UK, because the Indian tribe, the neighboring Indian tribe, kept attacking them and enslaving their people. And they thought that the people from the UK could help them stop the Indian people, right? The red people, not white people, from enslaving their people. But we're the ones, the United States, we're the slavers, huh? And I also wanted to bring up, when they had the transatlantic slave trade, right? It was impossible until the early 1900s or the late 1800s. Yeah, white people couldn't go into Africa; they would die, literally, because it's just like when the people from the UK or wherever, Spain or whatever, they came over to the Aztecs, and all the Aztecs died because they brought their some disease that was no big deal to the Europeans because they're used to it. But the Aztecs weren't used to it, so they all died. It's the same concept, you know what I mean? If you went into Africa, into the interior, you would catch a disease that your European body wouldn't be used to, and you would die. If you lasted 6 months in Africa, it's unheard of. You would be dead. You know what I mean? Most people would die within a month. You know what I mean? But if you were lucky, you could maybe make it 6 months, maybe a year if you were the luckiest man on the planet. But yeah, so no one went into Africa to snatch up the black people. You know what I mean? That's crazy. Okay, it couldn't have happened because they would be dead. No one, you know what I mean? Transporting the slaves from Africa to America, half the people died. Half the white people, half the black people, because the diseases they can't handle each other's these diseases. You know what I mean? Another thing is, white slavery was getting abolished in the UK, so we can move to. Oh, the thing was, the only reason why we switched to black slaves is because slavery was being abolished. You know what I mean? And in the UK for the Irish and that, and the black slaves in Africa were plentiful. As soon as it became a business, all the rich, powerful Africans went out and just started beating people over the head and taking them home as slaves and then selling them to the white man, to the Americans. So there was plentiful, and they were cheaper, easy. You know what I mean? It was just let me tell you, if the Africans are white, also, you know what I mean, just like England and that, nothing would have changed. They still would have went down and got slaves. They didn't care that they were black. Okay, if you have slaves, your mentality, your morality doesn't care about little things like. I mean, if you're gonna look over slavery, you're not gonna care about skin color. You know what I mean? You're not gonna be like, well, I'm gonna have a black slave, but a white slave, I'm just too moral for that. I'm just too moral. No, if you have a slave, you have no morals. So you know what I mean? Well, whatever. Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't matter what color the slave is. They're going to have them. They're going to, if they're plentiful and they're cheap enough, they're going to get them. I wanted to mention too. If you're racist piece of garbage, and you got to attach, skin color to everything, including slavery. White people actually. They didn't start slavery. Slavery was around forever in every country, every skin color country. It was plentiful. To the same degree, the same rate. Whether you were in Asia, or you were in the UK, or you were in Africa. We all enslaved people at the same rate, the same amount, pretty much, irrelevant of skin color. Okay. But who stopped slavery? I mean, if you want to add, it was the UK and the United States who stopped slavery, or not stopped it, but took it down to, they went into other countries and tried to get rid of it in the entire world. Okay, and they pretty much stamped a lot of it out. Who did that? Those were white people. Not, UK and United States was like 90% white people back then. Like, they're the ones who went out, risked their lives, stopped the boats from taking black slaves, to other countries. Even in the United States, who stopped slavery? White people did, you morons. You had 19 states in the north, the Northern Republicans, and you have 15 states in the South, the Southern Democrats. The Democrats wanted slaves, the Republicans did not. But they were all white. At least 90% of them were, you know what I mean? So who stopped slavery in the United States? White people. Idiots. Who stopped slavery in the entire world, pretty much? White people did. But it wasn't really white people. If you're a racist piece of garbage, then yeah, of course it was white people. But if you're not a racist piece of garbage, it was the UK and the United States. Okay. Let's see here. And I want you to keep in mind, like, people like talk crap about the United States and slavery, like we are the king of slavery or whatever. I want you to think about it, okay? During the Civil War, there were 19 northern states, 15 southern states, so 34 states. 34 states. That means 16 states, right, to be up to 50, came into the United States or was created after the Civil War. Meaning 16 states out of the 50, right off the bat, without looking anything up, all you need is common sense, right? If they joined the United States after the Civil War, then they never had slavery in that state, right? Common sense, right? So that's 1/3 of the states had 0 years of slavery. Not just 0 years, 0 months. Not just 0 months, 0 days. Not just 0 days, 0 seconds. Not 1 second did they have slavery in their states. 1/3 of the states. 16 states. Right off the bat. Then you got, out of the 19 states that were on the north, the Northern Republicans that were against slavery, some of them joined on the contingency that they abolish slavery before they become states. So now you're up to like 25 out of the 50 states who never had slavery. Not even 1 second did half of the states, and that's just from common sense. I'm going to do a video and show you out of all 50 states how many years they had slavery. Very few of them had slavery more than 15 years. Because even the 19 states, half of them had 0 years of slavery because they couldn't join the Union unless they gave up slavery, abolished slavery, you know what I mean? But the other half, right, they, if they were in the North, they abolished slavery in 1804. At the very earliest, they could have became states in 1789. That means 15 years. That means out of those 19 states that were on the north side, right, the Northern Republicans, I totally lost my train of thought here. That all of them, all 19 of them, had less than 15 years of slavery. Okay? So we got the 16 original ones. I mean, the 16 that came in after the Civil War, right? Then you got the 19. What's 19 and 16? 10, 20, 35. 35 states had slavery less than 15 years. 15 years. They always act like, oh, we've been slaves for 400 years. The United States has just enslaved us for 400 years. The United States hasn't even existed for 400 years, you moron. And you have these other idiots. We've been running for 250 years and we've been just living in slavery. The country's been around for about 250 years. Don't tell me the entire time it's been slavery. Slavery ended 160 years ago. Almost 2 centuries ago. Slavery ended. Okay? Yeah. Everyone in this country and everyone in the world thinks how horrible we are with slavery, even though every country in the whole world, in the whole history of the world, had slaves the entire time. But the United States only had slavery 0 seconds in half the states, 2/3 of the states, or 3/4 of the states only had slavery for 15 years or less. 15 years? Compared to all the other countries in the world who have had slavery since the beginning of time. Because we did it for 15 years before we got rid of it. Completely. Yeah, it's like unreal. Then the 15 states that were in the South, right? Some of them, you know, on the South side, the Southern Democrats in the Civil War that were fighting, you know, for slavery. Some of them were created like way after whatever, and so they even even the people on the south side of the Civil War, most of them still only had slavery for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. You know what I mean? Total. And then the couple like the 5 or 6 states that are left, yeah, they had slavery for like 66 years, 90 years, or 80 years, or whatever it was. I'm going to do a video on it. They act like most of the United States never even had slavery. And the part that did, we got rid of it so fast. Like within 14 years, half the country was abolished slavery. I mean, 15 years. 15 years, half the country abolished slavery. And we're terrible people because we abolished it after 15 years. When no other country, and then we went around to other countries and forced them to abolish slavery. But we're the bad guys. Okay. That all checks out, makes sense. Okay, and another thing I wanted to bring up, you know, there's slavery all over the world when we had black slaves in the United States, right? All over the place, man. And just in northern Africa, yeah, that 25% of Africa, that little tiny part at the top, just in northern Africa, there were more white slaves than there were black slaves in the Americas or the United States. So for black people to bitch and complain that 200 years ago almost, their great grandparents were slaves, yeah. So what? Everyone has great grandparents that were slaves, you idiots. And what's funny is, you know, the word slave comes from Slovakia or whatever, right? Because the Slavs are all white. They're lily white. Can't be more white than them. And that's where the word slave comes from, because there were so many white slaves in that country, Slovakia or whatever the name of the country is. Yeah, that's what the name comes, Slav, because the white Slav slaves, there were so many of them, they outnumbered everyone. That's where they got the name slave from. So the word slave comes from describing white slaves, because there were so many. But black people just have it so hard, you know, because their great grandfather was a slave. I wonder if they were close to their great 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 grandfather.